This video is sponsored by PCBWay. Hello there and welcome back to another video. Recently, my girlfriend parked her car outside overnight, and due to a bunch of other things that were going on, she forgot to lock it. In the morning, she realized that her Kobo e-reader was stolen out of her car, along with a couple of other small items. Thankfully, nothing extremely expensive got stolen, like a laptop or something, but after this happened, I had an idea to create a little device that will live in her car and make sure that locking it is always on her mind when she turns it off, even if there's a bunch of other stuff going on. Today, I'll be walking through the design process for this device with you all, and I'll also be showing you how I built mine and how to build one for yourself if you'd like one too. Plus, we'll get to see her reaction to what I've created, and fingers crossed, she approves of my idea. The main thought behind this device is to build something that gets her attention in some way every time that she turns her car off. Most of the time, right after a car gets turned off is when someone would need to be reminded to lock it, and although there will be times where she goes to grab something out of the car and it never gets turned on or off in that process, it should hopefully still work most of the time. So I started gathering components and brainstorming an approach for how to do this. I want this device to get her attention both visually and auditorily, therefore I'm going to use a combination of an LED and a buzzer to get her attention when the car turns off. I'll have the LED flash and the buzzer beep repeatedly at her, which should hopefully do the trick. Then I want to trigger this to go off when the car turns off, but I don't really want to have to tap into the car's wiring in order to get this trigger signal. And that's because not everyone is comfortable doing that, and I want this to be an accessible project to a wide range of people. So as much as I would like to pull from the power on signal wire from the car's head unit, that's off limits. So what about a photoresistor? There's got to be some kind of light somewhere in the cabin that I could stick this photoresistor on, and that light will eventually go dim when the car is turned off. Therefore, I can take this signal and trigger the buzzer and LED off of that. Perfect. Then, to take this input and control the outputs, I can use a basic microcontroller like this Arduino Nano, but for the sake of making this thing as compact and simplistic as possible, at least in terms of components, I think I'll instead just use an ATmega 328PU chip and a 16 MHz crystal oscillator, which is basically the heart of a Nano without any of the other fluff. So the final part of this device that I've got to figure out is power. I want this to trigger when the car turns off, and all of the easily available power inside a car's cabin is going to turn off when the car does. Things such as USB ports and the cigarette lighter port are therefore going to be off limits. So it's going to need to have energy storage on board that lasts long enough for it to do its job, and that will be able to handle a large number of charge and discharge cycles. Plus, I don't want it to be too hard to implement into the design. One of the first things that comes to mind are capacitors. These guys are rated to handle tens of thousands of charge cycles, charge up quickly, and might be able to last long enough to power this device through its full function. The only issue is, when getting ones that are large enough to last for the time that they'll need to, they're gonna end up being really big. And that's where these come in. You may or may not be familiar with these components, but if you look closely at the ratings on these guys, you can see that these are not rated in microfarads like regular capacitors, but are instead rated for multiple farads. These guys have so much more capacitance in so much smaller of a footprint, and yet nearly all of the advantages of regular capacitors in this application over something like a lithium-ion battery, making them perfect for this project. The only downside is that they're rated for a maximum voltage of 2.7 volts, and this should be a 5 volt circuit, but I can just chain two of them in series for a 5.4 volt capacitor. So that's the overall idea for this project, and of course there will be a bunch of other components in the actual schematic. For the supercapacitors, I plan to charge them off of a USB port in the car, as that should be live when the car is on and not when it's off. However, if I just put the supercapacitors across the USB's 5 volt and ground connections, it will draw a ton of current and burn the USB port out. So there's going to need to be a constant current charger circuit and definitely some other stuff to get a solid power setup for the microcontroller. But after a while, I had found a simple constant current charger circuit that I could use for these supercapacitors, which is just based around an LM358 op-amp and an IRLZ44N MOSFET. And after I had that base, I built off of that to make the rest of the circuit for the microcontroller. I wanted the microcontroller to be unpowered when the capacitors were charging. Therefore, I set up this little P-channel MOSFET circuit that shuts off the power output when the USB input is turned on. This will make sure that the microcontroller always gets hard reset when the car is turned on and the capacitors start charging, which should help with reliability and making sure it won't ever crash, especially because its power supply will not be regulated. I'm going to be powering the microcontroller straight out of the output of the capacitors, meaning that the voltage will drop over time until it eventually falls out of the 328P's usable voltage range. So here's that circuit on a breadboard, with just a white LED attached to its output. When I plug the two leads that will be connected to the USB cable's 5 volts and ground pins into a 5 volt supply, it charges the two 3 farad supercapacitors up with just under 500 milliamps of charge current, which eventually drops off once they're fully charged. Then, when I disconnect the 5 volt power, the LED turns on, powered off of the stored energy in the supercapacitors. Perfect! Now I can just hook up my microcontroller to its output, but actually wait a moment, I think I might be overcomplicating this. Having the power supply only come on when the USB port turns off, as the car turns off, means that I've already managed to figure out a way of sensing when the car turns off. I can just hook up a beeper and flasher circuit to the power output of this circuit, and boom, I'll have my alarm that only goes off when the car gets turned off done. And so that's exactly what I did, using a regular old 555 timer and completely scrapping the microcontroller. But I did want to implement a button that allows the user to shut off the device if it gets annoying before it runs out of charge, which takes about 1 minute. So I added a second P-channel MOSFET that's controlled by a 555 timer latch circuit, which is able to cut power to the 555 timer alarm circuit when a button is pressed. So now I've managed to go from a circuit that was going to be based around the 328P microcontroller chip to a circuit that's made entirely out of an LM358 and two 555 timers, along with some MOSFETs, transistors, and passive components, which I think is really awesome. After building this circuit up on a breadboard, I gave it a few tests and it worked pretty much perfectly. Other than the fact that on occasion, after a while of being turned off by the 555 latch circuit, the alarm would come on for a few more seconds until the capacitors died. Plus, the beeper never came on for long in these instances, and by this point, you're probably getting out of the car if you're not out already, and therefore, I don't see this as a very major issue. So I went on with creating a PCB for this project so that it's not a mess of wires and breadboards and is actually ready to be put in someone's car. Now to get the PCBs for this project, I went over to the website of the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay, and uploaded my Gerber files under their PCB production service. PCBWay offers a lot of different custom manufacturing services such as CNC machining, 3D printing, sheet metal production, and of course PCB manufacturing and assembly. After uploading my Gerber files, I selected how many boards I wanted, what color solder mask they should be, and I went with purple because it's for my girlfriend, and the rest of the settings were all perfect as their defaults. After that, I placed the order, and a little over a week later, the PCBs arrived on my doorstep, ready to be assembled and tested out. Thanks again to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Check them out through my link in the video description. I got straight to work soldering the components to the PCB, and I made a very conscious decision when designing this board to use only easy to solder through-hole components. Again, I want this project to be accessible to people if they think that it's something they really want, and therefore, anywhere that I could decrease the difficulty to build it, I did, including ditching all SMD soldering. After about 30 minutes of soldering, I finally had my board completed and ready to be tested out. By the way, you might notice a small piece of electrical tape over the hole on the buzzer in my footage, and I want to point this out because it's actually a very simple way to lower the volume of this buzzer significantly while still keeping it functional, because these can end up being really, really loud buzzers. Next, I took an old USB cable and cut one of the ends off of it, so that I was left with a cable that has a USB-A connector on one end and 4 exposed wires on the other end. These 4 wires are going to be ground, plus 5 volts, and the 2 data wires for USB 2.0. Generally, the red and black ones will be 5 volts and ground respectively, and the 2 other wires, usually some combination of green, white, or blue, are the data wires. I cut the 2 data wires off because I don't need them, and then soldered the 5 volt and ground cables to the USB power input connection points on the PCB. So now it's real testing time. I'll be plugging the USB cable in and out of a power bank, and when I plug it in, that symbolizes the car turning on and its USB port becoming live. And when I unplug it, that indicates the car getting turned off and the USB port going dead. When I plugged the circuit into the power bank, nothing happened initially, which is really good. Then, when I unplugged the USB cable, it started flashing its light at me and beeping at me, reminding me to lock the car, which has just now been turned off. Plus, when I pressed the button to shut it up, it turned the buzzer and light off immediately and then stayed off for a while. Eventually though, they did come back for a little while until the capacitors fully died. I spent a fair bit of time seeing how I could decrease the time that this second round of beeping and flashing lasted for, and I eventually added a single diode to the circuit so that the beeper circuit would reach its voltage cutoff earlier, therefore lasting for less time. This significantly lowered the amount of time for which the second round of beeping lasted for, and now it's down to a point where it feels like an intentional reminder for if you're taking a while to get some stuff out of the car. And with that, I think that it's time to put this device into my girlfriend's car and see what she thinks of it. Hopefully she likes it, but I don't know what she said about it yet at this point in the script, so let's jump ahead to where it's in the car and where she can review my creation.
Okay.
Are you ready? Are you excited? Are you just stoked?
I don't know, man.
Are you scared?
Not really. Oh my god, there's a fly in here.
Okay, you want to shut your car off?
Yep.
I really hope it actually works. Any thoughts on it?
It beeped at me. I don't know. I feel like.
Do you think that would like put the idea of locking your car on your mind enough after you shut it off to remember to do it even
I don't
if you're
know.
busy?
I feel like I'd have to use it a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far, what's the girlfriend's score out of 10?
Not really. I mean, like a 5.
Oh yeah, a 5 out of 10?
Shut up.
It's doing the second round. Just let it die.
If I'm staying in my car because I've turned off my car, this is gonna get really freaking annoying. Like I'm waiting for you to come out from like work or something. This is gonna get really freaking annoying.
Look, it's not perfect. Are you gonna lock your car now when you get out?
I maybe?
You're not sure?
Yeah, I feel like I need something that like actually like yells at me when I don't lock my car.
Okay. So something that is better.
It's a cool idea. It's just, I don't know. It's like, it would be cool if it registered when my door opened.
Yeah, I agree. It would be better if I could make it do that. The only reason that I don't have it doing that right now is because that like requires tapping into the door. Well, yeah, that didn't go over extremely well, but that's also not too surprising, I guess. I think our critiques of it are valid, but a 5 out of 10 is kind of brutal, so I'm definitely gonna have to start working on a version 2. But for the meantime, the board design, schematic, and a full tutorial on how to build one of these devices is available in the video description if it interests you at all and you wanna make one for yourself. Though, if you agree with my girlfriend on the few issues with this device and want to wait it out a little longer, I am going to be working on a V2, and feel free to drop any suggestions for that in the comments below. But that's all that I have for you in today's video. I hope that you were able to at least enjoy it, and maybe even learn a thing or two. In any case, I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.